Hello and welcome to Track versus Track. We're having a Minisode, spur of the moment Minisode. Matt and I were just messaging each other like we do on a daily basis now. And he had realized we had reviewed 10 albums. We talked about doing seasons or something like that. But instead of that, we're just going to do a little Minisode where we actually rank the 10 albums, which it's kind of a funny concept because we didn't like pick the best albums by certain artists by any mean. It was just sort of a random hodgepodge. Some of them recommended by colleagues. Some of them were just like, I think we need to do something from this decade. So we picked that. So this is by no means are we saying the album that's on top is like the greatest album of all time or any, it's not like a tournament thing. But if you've been watching along and you're wondering like where these have stuck in our minds and in our memories, this will probably give you an idea. Matt, you're the one who came up with the idea. What spurred this idea upon you?
Well, I just first wanted to, we were talking about some of these albums that we had to review or listen to ad nauseum in order to give a very faithful review. And we were talking about like, man, do I ever want to listen to this album again? And we both were kind of under the same conclusion, like not for a while, but maybe just, talking about these albums a little bit more will spur some renewed interest in them. Also, I'd like to take an opportunity to say thank you, Jacob, for spearheading this entire thing. This whole concept has really taken off because of your leadership and all the production that you've done. So I really appreciate it. And I also want to thank the guests, AJ Hodgman, Russ, Garrett, and Jesse Gavin for joining us. And they're going to be back. I know AJ's already been back twice for this review. But those guys will be back as well as some other guests coming up. So, and all the subscribers, even we got an extra one today. So thank you. Hopefully this, the more content we put out, hopefully this will pick up steam in the vinyl community. If there's anybody in your life that likes this type of thing, recommend this channel to them. We certainly enjoy doing it. And I think it motivates us to have knowing that people are out there watching and supporting. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I just do it for the fun of it. And this was your idea. You were doing it on your channel before you brought me along. I just try and make it the best or the most fun it can be for the two of us and for our guests. That's all that's important to me. So as we mentioned, we have 10 albums. We didn't really review these albums. We just sort of reviewed it against itself. So this is just more saying where it's going to rank, maybe in our memory. I know for me, I'm very much still in the honeymoon period with some of these records. So I hesitate to say the ones that are in my top 3 are like my favorite of the 10 albums because there are some I've known for most of my life. But the fact that they're new and fresh have them higher on the list. That said, my number 10, and I'm sorry, AJ, my number 10 has to be Huey Lewis and the News' Sports, an album I did grow to like more because we discussed it on the show. But I had a lot of fun talking about sports. But honestly, of the 10 we reviewed, it's the one I consider the least consequential and the one I'm still going to hear a lot of because it's out there in the world, but I'm not going to revisit it by choice too much. What's your number 10?
This may come as a shocker to you because I put this guy on a pedestal. This guy is like a false idol to me.
Oh, John, it's pretty low on my list too. Because the circumstances of why we did this particular John record. But yeah.
Can I tell you though, there are a few discoveries, that were made when listening to this album. This album that has basically, other than the title track, been a complete, unknown to me. So there are a few that I'm definitely going to come back to, not for a while, because as we, had stated, you listen to these albums.
You listen to them a lot.
So many times, and then you just don't want to listen to them again. But this is what I'm going to come back to, and it'd be interesting, like a year from now, if we were to do these top 10, this may very well have risen, exponentially. But right now, it's still number 10. Just too much filler in it for me.
Yeah, and I think even when we discussed that one, I said this is the first okay record we've done because there's a lot of filler in it. It's my number 9 of the ones we reviewed. I couldn't, in good conscience, put John Lennon below Huey Lewis on my subjective list. But for all the reasons you said, there are some great songs on there. We mainly picked that one for just weird reasons because of a miscommunication between the two of us. But it's a record I grew to like because I listened to it so much, and I don't know if I would have without the podcast or whatever this is, the show. What was your number 9 then? You actually kept your records out. I only kept Allman Brothers out because it arrived recently.
Right. Well, and before I forget to mention too, all 10 of these albums I like.
Oh yeah.
Everything that we've done so far in this exercise, I would consider to be at least 3.5 star out of 5-star records. Glad I own them. We'll visit them again, all 10 of them. So, that Lennon album being at number 10, it's not saying that I don't like it. I actually really like it, as well as I do my number 9. Really like this one. Was just recently on vacation. I was telling you, I listened to this a lot after we had already reviewed this and done the video. But for whatever reason, like the sameness of this album, just punk in general, the songs just kind of sound the same. I couldn't put it any higher than that. Love it. Appreciate it more than I ever did prior. But it's number 9 right now. So there it is. Sex Pistols.
Yeah, I'll get to that when I get to it. My number 8 is the record behind me, Eat a Peach. I left it out because I didn't have it for our recording at game. I finally got a look at the art. Oh, it's still on the seal. I'm not going to take it out. But that was a trip. I appreciate you and Russ saving some surprises for me inside there. There we go. Yeah. You won't be able to. You need it in front of you to get all the details of that. Again, it was a record I wouldn't have listened to otherwise, and I really liked some tracks. I'm just like, maybe it's because it's so fresh because we just reviewed it kind of as of this recording. And I listened to it a lot, and there's just too many jams for my taste to be on, for my subjective ranking.
All right. Well, we're going to have some overlap here, right?
Well, of course, there's going to be 10 albums of overlap.
Yeah, right. So yeah, Huey Lewis, number 8 for me. Obviously, I like this one quite a bit more than you. And I would say it's the cheesiest of all 10 for sure. Sorry, AJ. But there's so many like hooky, earworm, ear candy songs on here. It's a guilty pleasure help once again. Sorry, AJ. But I just think it's more fun to listen to than Nevermind the Bollocks and Mind Games. But I can't in good conscience put it any higher than number 8. I mean, this was a stretch as it is to put it above, John Lennon. Huey Lewis would feel pretty damn proud of himself right now to know that he just outranked John Lennon and the Sex Pistols. But you're not getting any more than that, Huey. That's as high as you're going to get. All right. But I really do love you for how saccharine, sweet, sticky, sweet, yummy, flavorful your music is. But you're no work of art. Okay. But I love you, buddy. I love you.
Oh,
number 8.
Number 8. So my number 7 now is it's it's gonna piss off. I think AJ will laugh off the ranking of Huey Lewis in the News. I don't think our guest Jesse would appreciate that I have Born to Run as low as I do. And it is an album I grew to like it. Like I talked about in the episode, Bruce has always been a barrier, has had a barrier of entry for me that I haven't been able to really pass and grow to love. But thinking about on it, I'm going to listen to Thunder Road a lot after that. But I don't know how often I'm going to put it on regularly. Maybe, but I want to listen to more Bruce because of it. So I'm glad we talked about it. But if I'm looking at the rest of the albums we talked about, there's just ones that I came in with more affection for, and there's more that were bigger discoveries for me. Sorry, Jesse, and sorry, Bruce.
Here is my number 7, Eat a Peach. Really enjoyed listening to this. I still, if this was live at the Fillmore, it would be higher. But the too many live tracks, that Mountain Jam is just too long for me. But I love, I love the ballads. Generally, that's not my thing, but Melissa and Blue Sky, beautiful songs. Greg Allman's voice is like butter. Great keyboard stuff, but just too many really long jams that weigh this down a bit, but I love it. I'm glad I own it. And this will definitely, this to me, Jacob, seems like Friday night in the summer with a bonfire rolling, maybe toasting some marshmallows, maybe drinking a beer, and then just throwing this on and being like, you know what, just play it out. So I think this one might be like a 4th of July album for me.
Yeah. Since I got this, I've played it in the record shop, and I've had people be like, "What is that?" Like they may have heard a few of the tracks, but they didn't know the artist, and because you have to look pretty close to actually see, who it is on the art. So, yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about that record. This one is probably the most culturally significant record on the list, but it has to be low because it is monotonous. I have Nevermind the Bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols. Because it was a hard record to talk about. As much as I like listening to it, when you actually have to be like talk about which track versus, other than like the ones that are the kind of the standouts, it's hard to dissect punk, especially if you don't want to get too much into the lyrics, which we kind of didn't in certain instances.
Or a family show.
For being a family show. And being a record that I've known for many years, but also having that complicated relationship of, knowing the Pistols are just a like the monkeys of punk rock, Monkees, created by Malcolm McLaren to sell S&M gear or whatever. There's a lot of messy business in there, but I still like it enough that it's in the middle for me because I've known it for so long. Yeah. And should we flip now? You do your 5 and then, yeah.
Sounds good. So I'll do 2 back to back then. Mm-hmm. All right. So my number 6 is B-52s. Love this album. I was very familiar with obviously Rock Lobster, but this was an album I owned. I just never really listened to that much. And this is one that I kind of see myself going back to more. This might be the album out of all of the 10 that I'm going to revisit the most. I think like rather soon. I was actually feeling this album when I was in Michigan and played it like 7 or 8 times on repeat. We were playing euchre, had a family euchre game, and we're just playing B-52s over and over again. Everyone was like, that's great. I didn't realize that they weren't so annoying. I hate that Love Shack song, but man, the B-52s are awesome. Yeah, they are. This entire album is great, except for Downtown. Sorry, Jacob. I know
that's all right.
Some people like that a few times. All right, so I'm going to do my number 5. Now, these next 5 are ones that I was very familiar with, and this is where it's really hard for me. And I wanted to put some of the newer ones or newer listens a little higher, but I just couldn't do it. So my number 5 is going to be Born to Run. I love the title track. I love Thunder Road, love Thunder Road. Jungle Land, I ranked number 1. So I obviously love that the most. Love 10th Avenue Freeze Out. But there's a couple of those tracks, like towards the end, we've got She's the One and Meeting Across the River, which just aren't at par with those other ones. I like Night and I like Backstreets quite a bit too. But I don't like it better than the 4 ahead of it. So Born to Run is my number 5. What about your number 5, Jacob?
My number 5 was what new one to me was Love Forever Changes. It's only as low as it is because I haven't listened to it since we recorded it. But it's one of those I'm so glad you introduced me to because it's the most obscure record we've talked about on the show. And it's one I feel like in the years to come, I'll be able to name drop or recommend to people when they say, oh, I like the Doors or whatever. And I'm like, you think you like the Doors? Check this out. So new discovery for me. I just haven't felt the pull to revisit it. So that's probably why it's a little bit lower on my list, but one of my favorites that we reviewed.
Oh man, that warms my heart. And you just can't wait until when it gets cold outside and you're out snow blowing or something like that. And you come in from outside and you've got, icicles on your mustache and your wife or your kids, like, what is that? And you go, oh, the snot has kicked against
it's really
turned into
snotty.
crystal. It's turned into crystal. So that one's going to come up a little later. My number 4 is Mr. Paul McCartney's. I wouldn't say, this, generally speaking, I've said this is my favorite, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's my second favorite McCartney album. By the way, the whole Linda McCartney credit, that it's credited to Paul Linda, is because the Beatles had just broken up like a year prior. This is 1971, and they had frozen Paul's assets. And he credits Paul and Linda McCartney because Linda McCartney could at least get 50% of the royalties to this album. So that's a new discovery. I didn't realize why.
I didn't know that. That's
It's because he loves her, right? He gives her half the writing credits, but that was basically a ploy. Her brother, or excuse me, her father was like the business manager of Paul. So I'm sure that was his clever doings. Love this album. Every song on it is a winner. Maybe not Long-Haired Lady. I know you like that one. I can't deal with her voice, man. But this is pretty much a perfect album. But I just like three more. Ram is my number 4.
My 4 was B-52s. It's the highest ranked of the ones that I brought to the table. And yeah, I still like it for all the reasons you said. It's just a great party record, and still the only, besides Linda, the one with female vocals of the records we've reviewed yet. And trust me, that's one. There are a few things I want to incorporate more into the show, and that's one of them. But yeah, B-52, still love it. Have it relatively high on my list. People should listen to it.
Absolutely. All right, my number 3, not going to say much more about it. You already talked about it. The Love album. Love the Love album. And kind of want to listen to it right now, actually. But that's where it goes, number 3. And I've got multiple copies of this one. I should have sent you one of these. I didn't realize you were having such a difficult time.
It's fine. It's just I order it and then I put it out. I let them put it out to see if someone else will buy it before I, claim it. That's just how I want to, help spread it out, I guess. And I figured that cover that would attract people.
Yeah, I actually have the box set, then I have this, and then a CD. But I was thinking that I kept hold of this one because I want to frame this one, I think.
Yeah, it's in print. Don't worry about it. I'll get it eventually. Number 3 for me is Ram. It was the first episode we did, and McCartney solo albums. I own a few, but this is the first time I didn't actually own Ram at the time of our recording. And yeah, it's probably my favorite, more than McCartney or McCartney 2 or Venus and Mars, or I think Flaming Pie is the other one I own.
Band on the Run?
What?
Band on the Run?
Well, okay, we'll have to get Wings and me are a whole other thing. I've never been I don't like the Wings stuff as much. Band on the Run has some good songs on it. We'll get to it eventually. Like, one of my subtle goals is to hit all of the highlights of the solo careers, and we've just kind of tapped the brakes because we can't decide which George album we're going to do. But yeah, Ram was great, in my top 3. Love it. Didn't know Monkberry Moon Delight before we did the recording, so new favorite of mine. 2 and 1.
This is tough. This is really tough. This is the toughest part right here.
I think we have the same 2.
We do have the same 2, which is insane. I think that is crazy. I did not expect that, Jacob. This is my number 2, but barely, because I prefer this band over the band that is my number 1. The Beatles, The Who, and the Kinks are my 3 favorite bands and have been for ever since the cows came home. This is not my favorite Kinks album. I think I've told you that. However, doing this exercise, this album rose exponentially. I don't think I even had this I definitely didn't have it in my top 3. It might have been like number 5. I think it's in my top 3 now. I love this album, but I mean, if this is kind of your gateway drug into the Kinks, other than, the 1964, 1965 singles, if this is like your proper album gateway drug to the Kinks, you've got so many great albums to explore, because I'm telling you, this band is the most critically loved, but most commercially underrated band ever, bar none. And their discography is massive. It's very overwhelming, actually. If you go to Rate Your Music or other web, and you see they've got 25 albums. Like that's a very.
And it gets complicated with the English, kind of like what we talked about with the Beatles, different English pressings than U.S. pressings, and Frankenstein albums and stuff like that. But it's just so we don't have to talk about it twice. This is my number one, just because I do like the Kinks more than I like the Zombies. But song per song, now that I'm thinking about it, the Zombies album is a bit shorter, isn't it? Like there's fewer tracks.
Yeah.
So it's probably a stronger album, to be fair, because I remember there being a couple like unnecessary, like a few redundant tracks in Preservation Society, which Odyssey and Oracle, which is my number two, doesn't have. But that was to get into Odyssey and Oracle. Why? Yeah, and I still don't own Preservation Society on vinyl. That one is out of print, or at least I can't order it from my usual place. But Odyssey and Oracle, I have a copy coming in, and that was groundbreaking for me because I had written off the Zombies as some of the season, time of the season, which is a track, if you watch the episode, I don't like. But the rest of it, I really like, whoa, these guys are great, 60s folk rock storytellers. So, and yeah, all thanks to Matt. Bring out your Odyssey and Oracle, talk about it.
Yeah, it's my number one. So you just mentioned the track listing. That's the knock I have against this. This is 15 songs. This is 12. Yes, we've got Butcher's Tale on here. We've got Time of the Season. I don't think those are bad though. They're different enough. They're not ones that I really want to listen to, but they add a lot of variety. But with Village Green, you had Monica. You got The Phenomenal Cat. Sitting by the Riverside, Big Sky. I like those songs. I feel like I'm slandering this album. This is my number two.
Yeah.
But I mean, Odyssey and Oracle to me, other than some of those weird songs, Changes, I knock because it opens up side two with just kind of that sparse congo and piano arrangement. But you've got Care of Cell 44, Rose for Emily, Maybe After He's Gone, Beechwood Park, Brief Candles, Hung Up on a Dream. I Want Her, She Wants Me. This Will Be Our Year. I like the highs on this album to me are higher than the highs on this album. But you got Do You Remember Walter on here too, and Picture Book and Johnny Thunder. It's hard to pick, man. You could put a gun to my head and I'd change my answer tomorrow. I don't know.
Pretty tough. Yeah, pretty tough. And again, we picked these albums fairly arbitrarily, but those are the two that are probably the most similar of the lists because, well, they're ones Matt liked and chose and known for many years, but they're from the same era for sure. So those are both of our top. Well, yeah, and Forever Changes was pretty high on mine too.
All 1968.
Yeah, what a year. All right, let's put our lists up here in case people forgot. Got lots of good episodes coming up that we haven't recorded yet, but I feel good about them because of the guests we have coming on. We're going to do some newer music, which is going to be a change of pace. And maybe, I don't know, if we do another 10, are we just going to rank those 10 or are we going to rank 20?
That's a good question.
That's a decision for another day.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll remember half. But I'm like Kelly Bundy. I don't know if you remember that bit from Married with Children, where if you put one piece of information in her head, something else has to go. And they were training her for the game show, and we see Garfield and everything else like just leave her head. That's
I remember.
I think someone got it. I think about that a lot, way too much.
So one thing I'm a little nervous for our next 10 is that I'm not going to be able to be the props man. There's a few that I don't even own anything of. One that we've got coming up that I don't intend. Well, I mean, it could change, I suppose. I've listened to this album a few times, but I don't see myself buying it. So I will feel inadequate, I think.
Yeah.
Because you're the smart, witty, charismatic host.
I'm kind of
your bumbling idiot sidekick at this point that makes up for it with props. So I don't know what I'm going to do here.
No, we'll get back into the classic rock. Don't worry about it. We'll pull something from your back shelf. No, it'll be eventual. But thanks for joining us for this mini episode. We'll see you for the next round.